An enhanced risk has now been issued from the Storm Protection Center today with a 10% hatch risk for tornadoes, as well we do have a 30% for wind. So we're going to be watching out for relatively significant severe weather with as well a QLCS mode and then discrete mode all across the states of Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and then eventually into Georgia. We are watching out for as well a pretty significant overnight threat with tornadoes and damaging winds. But before we get in this severe weather forecast with the location, timing, the worst threats, and exactly what timing, all of that good stuff, I would recommend you guys to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Smash that like button as well as that bell icon notification. But without further ado, let's get in the video. So here's the latest day one outlook, and this is pretty much similar to what I was kind of expecting for this enhanced risk. The reason why it is pretty far north is because that's we're going to be seeing kind of that low pressure kind of along the Mississippi River Basin, and that's where we're going to kind of be seeing that boundary layer, and that is going to with that low pressure being just to the northwest, we're going to be seeing some back to wind and as well as some pretty good forcing along this area, which is why that's where that enhanced risk is. There is some uncertainty down here towards portions of southern Alabama and as well as kind of east central Mississippi, so they are under a slight risk. There is some questioning of whether there's going to be convection or not, and as well whether there's enough low level forcing. But here's the overall enhanced risk. Enhanced risk is issued for about 4.6 million people, and it does include actually some pretty large cities, including Huntsville, Alabama, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Rome, Georgia, South Haven, Mississippi, Decatur, Alabama, as well. It does include areas like Florence, Alabama. It does include areas like South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, Tupelo, Mississippi. Actually, Tupelo, Mississippi is, in my opinion, probably one of the worst areas under the gun right now today. And then we do have a slight risk for about 14.6 million people. This is as well pretty widespread. It actually has gone all the way up to the now Appalachian Mountains across the Great Smoky Mountains. And that's going to be mainly driven by wind and as well by tornadoes, as we are, like I said, watching out for a pretty good overnight threat for tornadoes and wind. And then we have a pretty large marginal going all across the Gulf Coast from Texas all the way to the Carolinas. This is going to be mainly driven by the wind threat and as well the tornado threat, as there is some uncertainty with some cells down there towards the Gulf Coast that could possibly bring in some tornadoes. So there's definitely a lot of uncertainty kind of the further south we go with this event. But here's the overall tornado probability. So the actual whole 10% is not hatched. The only hatched probability we have is actually across northern Mississippi and as well northern Alabama, specifically towards the northwestern portion of the state of Alabama and the south and the northeastern portion of Mississippi. Like I did say, Tupelo's kind of under the gun here. So here's the overall population for the significant severe. It's actually less than a million people, so it's definitely designated for a pretty somewhat rural area. But again, there is big cities like Tupelo in there, but it does include areas like Decatur, Alabama, Madison, Alabama, Tupelo, Mississippi, Florence, Alabama, and Athens, Alabama. And it's kind of just to the southwest of, just to the southeast of Memphis, and it's not too far away from areas like Huntsville. But Huntsville is in the 10% non-sig, so definitely still watch out for the probability of possibility for some significant tornadoes likely in that general area, especially as you go in the overnight threats. We're going to be seeing some pretty large photographs, some really high SRH values, and as well, we're going to be seeing some rather good forcing in that general vicinity as well, some pretty decent cape. But the 10% non-sig does include around 4.5 million people, so you kind of see the difference between the areas in the non-hatched and the hatched. And this hatched obviously includes less than a million people, while this 10% non-sig goes from eastern Arkansas all the way up towards northwestern Georgia and southeastern Tennessee. It's actually not too far away from North Carolina, so seeing a 10% in December for tornadoes in the Great Smoky Mountains would definitely be pretty weird if you saw that in December. But Huntsville, Chattanooga, Decatur, South Haven, and Collinsville, Tennessee, you guys are all under that 10%. And then we have a pretty widespread 5%, which I'm actually in, so I'm definitely going to have to watch out for the probability of maybe a chance for an embedded tornado or so within this MCS. But the 5% goes all the way from areas of the first mode, which is actually going to start to begin within an hour or so, and that's going to be in eastern Arkansas and as well a portion of Louisiana. So that's where we have a 5% there for that first mode that's going to develop along that moisture nose and as well along that along that boundary layer. And then that 5% goes all the way up towards South Carolina, North Carolina, and the Great Smoky Mountains, because like I did say, there is a chance for some embedded tornadoes. And then we have a large 2% chance all across this general area again. 2% is definitely, there is a slight chance, or very, very low chance for any tornadoes, but that's going to include Charlotte, Nashville, New Orleans, Greensboro, and Durham. It actually includes 13 million people. Here's a wind threat. So again, we're mainly the big wind threat is going to be along that overnight threat, and that's going to be towards Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama. I wouldn't doubt if they actually do extend this 30% slightly further to the east, closer towards northeast Georgia, as well even North Carolina, because that low load jet's going to be very, very amplified by the time we get in the overnight hours, and we can be seeing some really nasty winds. However, again, we will see how that plays out. But the 30% right now includes around 4 million people, so it looks like that a wind threat's going to be very much kind of isolated to the east of that Mississippi River. We're not going to be seeing much of a wind threat for those Mississippi River storms. It's going to be very broad and brief, and they're going to be pretty weak. And I mean, there's going to be a tornado probability with them, but they really won't produce much of a big wind threat. But as we get to the linear mode and getting toward developing QLCS across Tupelo, and then eventually towards going through Alabama, southern Tennessee, and as well northwest Georgia, that's where we're going to be seeing that greater probability of the enhanced worthy for winds. Again, it's going to include Huntsville, Chattanooga, Decatur, Madison, Cleveland, Tennessee, and then of course Rome, Georgia. And then we have a slight chance for a hail out of 50%. We could see some significant hail across areas like Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama, and then that will decrease as we get towards Georgia and North Carolina and closer to the Appalachians. So here's the medical discussion I was talking about in the intro. So this is a medical discussion that we have currently for that first mode of severe weather. So there's that boundary, that surface boundary right here, kind of across Mississippi, Arkansas. So that's where we're gonna start seeing. It's gonna start pushing its way northward, and that's where we're gonna start seeing that convection developing just kind of to the southeast or southwest. Sorry, kind of to the southwest is where we're going to start seeing the storms developing. That's we're going to be seeing kind of that moisture nose kind of moving along the same way with the boundary layer. So basically in these general areas is where we're watching out for. And as this boundary layer and as this warm front does push its way further northward, these severe storms will as well push their way northward. But this southern part of the medical discussion is going to kind of be the area to watch out first. That's going to be across south or northeast Louisiana, southeast Arkansas, and as well far west central Mississippi. And then eventually as this boundary layer does push further northward along with that little jet, then we're going to be seeing a lot more thermos and kinematic support for development across Tupelo, southern Tennessee, western Alabama, and then across eastern Arkansas. So here's the overall threat, though. Severe threat expected to increase by 18Z. Right now it's actually 17Z, so we're going to start seeing that storms developing within a very close vicinity now. A few tornadoes and damaging gusts will be the main hazards with this activity. Watch likely in the next 1 to 2 hours, and they actually have already issued a tornado watch, and I'm going to show you that very, very soon here. But again, we are going to be watching out for some potential embedded tornadoes here. But of course, our main tornado threat is going to be towards the areas of that kind of western or eastern end of that medical discussion. But there you see that really amplified and little jet there. You see that really intense those wind vectors there, seeing some really intense shear starting to develop, and that little jet is really uptrending on models, and it's really uptrending kind of currently on the OBS, so it's looking pretty interesting of a setup. So this is actually a pretty high worded, I'd say, or really good worded tornado watch, considering it's the first of probably, I would say we maybe get 2 more tornado watches, maybe, or actually 2 more tornado watches. This is probably going to be one of the main tornado watches, considering the radius of the overall severe weather today. But here's the overall tornado watch. It is including many of that areas in that medical discussion, except Alabama and Tennessee, or at least closer to the Alabama and Tennessee border. But here's the overall tornado watch. It does include a pretty widespread area. So here are the counties. Here's the overall area: Greenwood, Tupelo, Memphis is actually under that, as well Columbus, Mississippi, Monroe's just in it as well. We do have along the border there, Greenville, that general area. But here are the overall counties. So look at that probability of likelihood of tornadoes is actually going to be high. And that's going to be a little bit more centered, I'd say, towards this part of the medical or of the tornado watch that's going to be the main area to watch out, at least for this part of the tornado watch. But let's go ahead and get into the overall probabilities here. But again, we do have a high probability for tornadoes, moderate for EF2 plus, a high for severe wind, and then a moderate for severe hail, both 2+ inch diameter, and just severe hail in general. And then we do have the probabilities. But let's look at the probabilities though. So we do actually have a 70-50 tornado watch. Is actually pretty high considering what I expected to see. I was expecting maybe a 60-30, but this is a 70-50. So we do have a 70% chance for probability of 2 or more tornadoes, and then a 50% chance for probability of 1 or more being EF2 plus, which is definitely pretty interesting. And then we have a 70-40 there for the wind. Probability of 10 or more severe wind events is a high. And then we have a probability of 1 or more being above 65 knots, which would be significant. That would be 40%. And then the overall probability of 6 or more combined severe wind/hail events is going to be very high, at a greater probability than 95%. So this is going to be really interesting to watch out for. And here's the overall initial radar practically. So we're going to start seeing very soon, we're going to start seeing these cells start to really pop off across this general area. And then they're going to push their way into east-northeast storm motion, kind of following that little jet, and then of course kind of following that boundary layer in as well, that meso low pressure, which is at around 1,006 millibars, which is as well going to kind of follow this general area. So we can go ahead and get a look at the overall observation of the obs right now. So actually, here's the overall, you can kind of tell there's the overall boundary layer, the surface boundary layer that's actually setting up here along eastern or southeastern Arkansas, and then eventually it's making its way further closer towards Tennessee. We actually do have values already of 2,500 joules per kilogram of surface-based CAPE, and then we have values of near 3,000, nearly 4,000 off the coast of Louisiana and Mississippi. I would say these thermos and this overall support is really starting to uptrend, and actually I'd say over being over forecasted. I think these are really surpassing the expectations of the thermos at this time of the day. 2,000 widespread, 2,500. And notice how, again, these storms are going to start to develop as this boundary layer does push further northward, and that's where we start seeing that more kind of support. But if we look at the overall, let's see here, surface observations, you're gonna be seeing some pretty good dews, as well as some pretty good moisture. So you can kind of tell where this overall warm front is kind of making its way. So you kind of see we are seeing some pretty warm air across northern Arkansas with some 40s and dew points in the 50s. But here's kind of the overall warm sector as of now. I'd say it's kind of opened up like this. I think this is the overall warm sector at this point. So again, we're gonna start to see this. We're gonna start to see as this boundary layer pushes north, where we're gonna start to see these temperatures as well push up higher, and as these dew points will become higher, and as its warm sector does continue to be pretty free, and as will open and expands, that's when they're going to start getting interesting in the next few hours. But I mean, look at this. We're seeing high 70s in southern Mississippi, as well as some low 80s, as well dew points in the upper 70s. Look at that, dew points way surpassing expectation, exceeding forecast. I mean, look at that. We're be seeing some really high dews. 75 there in southeast Louisiana, 76 dew points in southwest Louisiana, and then we are seeing now at this point we're starting to get already some mid 70s for temperatures already southern Arkansas, as this moisture nose is pushing northward, as well as to see these dews start to surpass the upper 60s, or surpass the mid 60s across the Mississippi River Basin. And we're still seeing kind of some cooler air across the northern portion of Mississippi, and as well kind of towards southern Tennessee, with 60s as real-time temperature and upper 50s as dews. But again, as this warm sector pushes northward, as well with that warm front, we're gonna start seeing a lot better temperatures, as well with a lot better thermos. But if we look at the overall 3-hour surface-based CAPE change, look at that. We've seen up to in the past 3 hours 1,000 joules per kilogram difference increase within the past hour, actually, or 3 hours right here. Look at that, right in that area where that moisture nose. So you can kind of tell, here's that moisture nose. Here's the overall moisture nose right here. It's right here, and that's where you see that big difference in that cape, and there you see that moisture is just pushing northward, and then that low pressure is actually going to be somewhere around here. It's going to kind of push its way kind of to the east northeast, and they're going to be seeing that boundary layer kind of right here next to it, and then you have that mouth of that LOJ kind of down here. So here's going to be the overall setup across this area with really good cape already. As well, we are seeing some decent mid-level laps reach already. Within the area of 6 degrees Celsius to 6.5 increasing, and as we do see these rather these large EMLs being forecasted before mixing out around the evening hours, we're going to be seeing some steep mid-level and low-level lapse rates. As well, we're going to be seeing some pretty good mixed layer cape. We're going to be seeing mixed layer cape at around 1500 already. Again, there it is, right along that moisture nose, and as well, again, there's that boundary layer setting up across northern Mississippi and southeast Arkansas. So we are going to start getting some better conditions already. If we look at the overall bulk shear between surface and 1 kilometer, already getting around spots of around 20 to 30 knots, and that will obviously increase and amplify. But yeah, we're starting getting some pretty good moisture convergence as well. We're gonna get some positive moisture convergence across, where, just along that Mississippi River basin there with that moisture nose. So this is kind of where the moisture nose is forecasted to be right now based on the observations. So overall, we're getting some pretty good conditions, I see the least. Let's now go ahead and get a look here at the overall ARRR16Z model run. So let's go ahead and look at the overall mode we're going to be looking at in the overall composite relativity. So here's the overall 19Z. So like I said, you're going to start seeing these storms right here across the Mississippi River Basin. That's where we're going to be seeing kind of just south of that boundary layer. So we're going to be seeing possibly first some quasi-discrete cells. We're going to be seeing somewhat discrete cells along the eastern Arkansas area, as well portions of even along the northeastern portion, Louisiana, and then of course kind of towards where that tornado watch is right now, and that's going to kind of start to really amplify as we get a 20Z, as we get those thermos, as we get those kinematics both at the same time. We're going to start getting some pretty nasty supercells along this area at 20Z, so definitely watch out the probability for some tornadoes to start to be possible along this general area, because again, the 850 millibar in the low levels won't be too strong along this area, but as you get towards 20 and 21Z, they will start to increase as this little jet, the mouth of the little jet will kind of be just to the east-south or east-northeast of that low pressure. But really good, pretty good supercells along this general area here, just along that vicinity. So there's gonna be some contamination here, but look at that 2,700 cape. 2005 mixed layer cape. That is some really good thermos across this area, definitely. So I'm gonna be really watching out for some tornado potential as well as some strong wind potential. Now by 21Z and 22Z, we still kind of have that discrete mode here. However, as we start to go towards 22Z and then 23Z, we start to see now kind of a linear mode start to develop here. But however, again, with the really high forecasted SRH now, with a very amplified little jet forecasted by the ARRR and the overall thermos, there is going to be really good chances for some really significant tornadoes along this line here. So we are going to be seeing some embedded supercells. We are going to be seeing some rather good rotation along these areas. I mean, if we can do sounding here, maybe towards Tupelo, we're gonna get some decent results here around 23Z, just near Tupelo. We're gonna get some good soundings. Although just ignore the contamination because we are looking at base relativity. But look at that sounding there, really intense. Lower level, 3 kilometers at 43 knots. They're definitely this little jet at 850 millibars, and these low level wind fields have really increased, which is definitely gonna really be the reason why that 10 hatch has been issued. And then by 0Z, we're gonna start seeing this now linear mode move through Tennessee now, make its way towards Alabama, and then at this point we should get a new tornado watch to be issued, and then we're going to start seeing some somewhat a discrete mode developing to the south now along the other half of this severe weather threat, and the other half of Mississippi and Alabama, closer to Tuscaloosa, closer towards Jackson, closer towards the Greenberg area. So as we now go towards 1Z, we're going to start seeing some discrete cells developing along Mississippi, then the southern half of Mississippi, just kind of towards the southwest of that big linear mode, which is going to bring some really strong winds as well as some possibly strong tornadoes along the line here. Look at near Huntsville, you're gonna get some really enlarged photographs. Even though there is contamination, these photographs are definitely pretty intense along the areas. That's just some really intense photographs. And then you have the discrete mode down there, which could definitely bring in some tornado potential by 3Z. We are gonna be seeing a concern of low level forcing along this area, which is why there's an enhanced risk down there. But I mean, these are gonna be some pretty nasty supercells, and if they do develop just in enough time before these before this forcing kind of dies out, and um before this setup just gets pretty messy in general on the worm sector at 3Z. If these storms do develop in that before that time frame, before that happens, we could definitely get some tornadoes along the lines near Tuscaloosa. So definitely watching out here. Even if you're in that slight risk across Alabama, Mississippi, definitely keep a close eye on it, because even by 4Z, you can get some nasty supercells and as well some discrete modes. But look at now by 3Z, there comes that big linear mode now as well. Again, we seeing again that nasty tornado threat still carrying to northwest Georgia. We are watching out for a tornado threat. This is not that bad of a sounding either. If you go maybe closer towards maybe northeast Alabama, yeah, we're gonna get a lot better soundings if we actually look at the Kinemax and dew points. But look at the 4Z, 5Z, and then 6Z. We're gonna really watch out for a pretty apparent tornado threat all along the Georgia area and as well Alabama. So that's why we have a pretty widespread 5%, as well why we have a 5% along the Carolinas, because as well with its embedded linear mode, we could definitely see some tornadoes and possibly some embedded supercells. But here's a look now at the 16Z. Look here at 16Z, and by 17Z, there you start to see there's that low pressure kind of down here where you see that little notch in the low jet. That low pressure is going to be somewhat down here. There's that low pressure around, I believe it's sitting at 1,006 millibars. And then you're going to see that little jet start to really push off now from Louisiana, eventually starting to get into Mississippi. So that's why we don't really have a tornado threat now, at least now, because again, that little jet has really yet to arrive in this general area. But as we now go to 18Z and then 19Z, that's when that forecasted probability is to start to see that tornado potential along the areas of that middle school discussion. That low pressure going to be, I believe, around down, or actually, it looks like we have a method low right here at this point towards Mississippi around 19Z. And then that's where you kind of have that little dip down there in that little jet. But again, that little jet's going to kind of dip to the, or to kind of eject to the northeast of that low pressure. So that's where that's going to be the general area of those backed winds, and as well those pretty good directional shear values. If we go to 20Z, we're going to be seeing some better values. Look at that eastern Arkansas, as well portion there of west central Mississippi. We are going to be seeing some decent soundings here. 3,000 Cape, 2,100 mixed layer Cape. Again, those lower levels are still going to be lacking along this area, but as you go closer towards that, towards kind of the eastern half of Mississippi, you're going to be seeing a little bit better now, getting to the 30s for those lower levels as well. Going to get some southerlies as well, so you're going to start seeing some better directional shear as well. 1,700 surface Cape, 2,000 actually 1,200 mixed layer Cape, and as we go to 21Z, now this little jet really amplifies. That surface low is going to be around down here. There you see that little dent in that little jet, and that's where this boundary layer is going to be set in place. Around actually, this boundary layer is going to be set in place further northward around this general area. So we're going to be seeing a lot of this. Here's that 850 millibar, and then here's that boundary layer. The moisture node is going to be somewhere around right here too. So going to be really watching out for this general area as we go closer to 21Z. So by 21Z, we're still going to be seeing that kind of quasi-discrete mode. And this shear is going to really increase. So we're going to be seeing some pretty nasty soundings towards Tupelo. Look at that Tupelo area. Going to be seeing some really nasty soundings as well. Look at that. We're going to be seeing some really extreme saturation as well. Going to be seeing some practically southerlies as well. So we are going to be seeing some back southerlies. 1,800 surface Cape, 1,200 mixed layer Cape. Definitely some really good directional shear as well. There is slightly better lower level shear, but look at that SRH. It's really amplified much more compared to yesterday. We're already at 324 at 3 kilometers. And as we go closer now towards the areas near the Alabama border with that discrete mode, we're going to be seeing even some better soundings. Going to be seeing really nice backing towards that surface, and then you're going to be seeing that veering with height, and then some more backing in those mid levels. And that's where you have these really enlarged photographs because of these decent lower levels, and we're going to be seeing that pretty good Pretty good east south or east northeast storm motion. So we're gonna be really watching out for these storms to kind of go like this along Alabama and Tennessee. As we now go closer to 22Z, this is when it starts to really amplify a lot. That's where we're gonna start really getting our main backed winds as this surface starts to really increase or steepen, at least to say the least. And look at that hodograph right there. Really good hodograph with southeasterlies. So we are going to be seeing some backing. And look at that. 36 at 1 kilometer, 37 at 3 kilometers. Look at that storm active velocity at 430. So we're going to be seeing that really high SRH because of the backed winds, because of that steep low pressure. And that's where we're going to be seeing a really enlarged hodograph. That's a really enlarged hodograph. 1400 surface cape, nearly 1000 mixed layer cape. This is a really good sounding as well. Look at that orientation between that 1 to 6 kilometer shear vectors. Really good. So this is going to be pretty concerning as we go to Tupelo. Really concerning discrete mode in Tupelo. This is a really good sounding here as well. Kind of more towards the southerly, but still some pretty good backed wind. 37 knots at 3 kilometers. As well, going to be seeing some southerlies at the surface, 400 SRH at 3 kilometers, 1200 surface cape. This is definitely a really good scenario for these areas for northeast Mississippi. So if you're near Tupelo, I would definitely recommend you guys have a plan because this is not looking good, at least for you guys, because this looks like a really intense discrete mode before it kind of linears out. And even look at this sounding here in northwestern Alabama. Even northwestern Alabama, look at this sounding. 36 at 3 kilometers, SR8 at 407. Nearly 800 mixed layer cape, southerlies as well, the surface. And as we go to 23, he's going to just continue to amplify this 850 millibar. It's going to really continue to amplify. So we're going to be seeing some really nasty, oh my god, that's a really nasty sounding there across Alabama. And then as we continue towards 0Z, this threat will continue to be visible even into southern Tennessee. We're going to be seeing some decent tornado threats as you go to the southern half of the state near the border of Alabama. See, that's where you're going to be seeing that tornado threat over there. And then by 0Z and then 1Z, this threat is going to continue to merge towards north central Alabama, closer to Huntsville. Really good sounding here. Pretty good lower levels as well, this little jet, but yeah, there you see those southeasterlies. And then as we go to really 1Z and 2Z, we're going to start seeing that second mode of discretes along the southern half of Mississippi. We're all going to be seeing some pretty nasty soundings as well as some nasty hodographs in this general area. Look at that. This is a really good hodograph, although it's a lot less intense with the enlargement as the upper levels are a little bit less strong, but southerlies at surface, still really good. 0 to 3 kilometer shear as well. We're going to be seeing 1600 mixed layer cape. This is as well not shabby. And the thing is, the reason why there isn't really a higher probability down here near Tuscaloosa is because of the uncertainty of convection down here. Models like the 93 kilometers don't really have any convection down here. There's a really good hodograph here. Pretty much really veered though, so it's a lot less. There's going to be a lot more veering down here as this low pressure really won't be felt down here, considering its weakness or considering how weak this low pressure is. So it's going to be closer towards the north of Alabama is where you're going to start seeing those really backed winds. For example, look over here towards, this is also going to be seeing some backed winds. Let's look towards the northeast Alabama. Going to be seeing some really intense winds in the lower levels. It's going to continue to carry on to Georgia, which is why we have that enhanced risk there. Let's look at the overall bulk shear at 0 to 1 kilometers though. They're going to see that really little jet really pushing in toward into Mississippi, and then my 21Z just blows up to 51 knots at 0 to 1 kilometer, which is really a pretty big uptrend compared to yesterday morning where we were looking at a downtrend. But look at this here, really enlarged down. I mean, look at that backing. That's really intense backing at the surface with some really good southeasterlies. So these soundings, all they are, I mean, they are contaminated. They are really good for sure. I mean, look at that sounding. That's really good. Southeasterlies, really intense, around 55 to nearly 60 knot at 0 to 1 kilometer. So really big uptrend. So this could very well be really significant. This could be a really interesting scenario that's gonna really be panning out. And there you see there that threat continues by 1Z across Alabama as well, eventually getting towards Georgia. Georgia can't be ruled out the possibility for some significant severe weather as we go towards around 2Z. And of course, gonna be watching out that second mode down there towards Alabama. Yeah, there you see that's good sounding. It's really good. A mixed layer cape. The question is there gonna be enough? Is there gonna be enough forcing mechanisms? There is a lot of veering down here. There is a little bit less cape as we go towards the areas near Tuscaloosa. There is gonna be a little bit lackluster shear, or of cape, but there is gonna be some really good mixed layer cape down here as well. There is gonna be seeing some diurnal heating down here, so there could definitely be some good storms that really pop off towards the areas of, again, it's going to be kind of towards just towards the border of Mississippi, and that's really good sounding here. Although it is veer, that's going to be really good. 34 knots at 3 kilometers. There is going to be 1200 surface cape, 1600 mixed layer cape, so we can't rule the possibility for some tornadoes down here. That's why there is a 5%. I don't see a 10% going down there with the uncertainties, but we will see how it plays out. Here's the overall dew points here with the wind barb. So there's that moisture nose I was talking about. There's that big, just a different color. Here's that big moisture nose kind of pushing its way northward along the Mississippi River Basin. There's that low pressure. It's going to be around right here. You can kind of tell by the wind barbs kind of cyclonically moving around it, so that's where that low pressure is right here. So anywhere kind of on it, or just to the east of that low pressure, it's going to be the main area to watch out for. So let's go ahead and do this sounding somewhere right here. There is actually some backing right here across northern Mississippi. And again, like I did say, right now there's going to be some really weak shear at lower levels, but as we go toward around 21Z, we're going to start seeing a lot better lower level support. But these are some decent settings considering the low shear we have in the lower levels. And look how the difference between the lower levels and the upper levels. That's why we're seeing such crazy speed shear here, at least in the upper levels. And I mean, we kind of somewhat have the directional shear, but we don't have the speed towards the lower levels. But 2,300 cape and 1,700 mixed layer cape. So the thermos are absolutely there. It's just the Kinemax really aren't there. That's why the 10% hatched isn't there. Just considering that we mainly are not going to be seeing a significant threat there. But as we go to 21Z, there's that low pressure now pushing its way closer towards northern Mississippi and closer to Memphis. So areas kind of along this area you have to watch out for towards 21Z. And guess where that includes? The back to winds in Tupelo. This is going to be really nasty sounding. I'm calling it. And yeah, that's a really nasty sounding there. Southerlies at the surface. Let's go towards maybe a back sounding down here near Alabama. That's also going to be pretty. This is actually a really good photograph. Yeah, some good southerlies. I don't know how to say this is going to be a pretty good setup. By 22Z, we're going to be seeing some more backed winds along that just near that low pressure. That's going to be really intense. Now 42 knots at 3 kilometers there. Some more backed winds, or some very weak southerlies across Alabama towards the Florence area. So we're going to be seeing some really nasty sounding across that area. And then as we go towards 1Z, 0Z, there's that low pressure toward Alabama. So the area to be watching out for at 2Z would be northwest Georgia. And that's where we get a rather good sounding here. There is going to be a lot less cape. However, with the overall high SRH values we're going to be seeing here because of those backed winds. Look at that, almost 500 SRH there, and that's what there actually is southeasterly. This is a really good sounding, even if there is not too much surface cape. There is a good amount of mixed layer cape there to kind of replace that with 700, and that's it right there in northeast Alabama. And then if we go towards maybe closer towards the Rome, Georgia area, we could also see a slight tornado threat. Again, there's going to be 500 mixed layer cape. And this is going to be a little bit more messy, but there is that really high SRH. And look at that, 46 knots at 3 kilometers. And there is that there's that veering, or there's that backing that's right there towards northwest Georgia. And then by 3Z, it's going to be a little bit better as that surface low steepens closer. So there it is. This is a lot better sounding towards Rome. And then let's go towards maybe the Canton area in Georgia. That's going to be another pretty nasty photograph. So definitely watching out pretty nasty setup today. The next we'll be looking at is the overall surface-based cape. And this can kind of give us a better idea of where that surface boundary is. So by 19Z, that surface boundary is going to be kind of at this point really around this general area, and that surface low is going to be around right here, and then by 20Z, and then by 20Z and 21Z, there's that low pressure going to be around right here, and that's where we see that dent and that boundary. But I'm going to be seeing some really high surface-based Cape values along this area, especially along that moisture nose, as well along that open warm sector near Mississippi. Going to be seeing values around 2,300 Cape values. So there is going to be really high Cape across this area, but the shear is not going to be really there. That's where you see these really small photographs, and then those really mental upper levels shear, and that's where you see the spike right there. But there is going to be, like I said, there is going to be definitely 10 non-sig worthy over here across the western Mississippi, but the uncertainty with the shear is not going to really pan out. But by, let's go to 22Z across Mississippi near Tupelo, this is going to be a lot better. Look at that PDS sounding right here in Tupelo. I'm going to go ahead and post that somewhere. It's a PDS sounding in Tupelo. Look at that. Critical angle is almost perfect at 60. That practically is perfect. That is a really, really good sounding here. This is probably our best sounding so far today. You have southeasterlies, you have backed winds, really, really good profiles with a 40 knot 3 kilometer, really good directional and speed shear with really good vertical shear, really good 1 to 6 kilometer orientation. This is actually probably the best sounding I've seen all day today. That's right over Tupelo. So if you're in that Tupelo area, I recommend you guys really, really take precautions because this is like a significant event for you guys. Again, that was the best sounding I saw so far today. Not because it's at PDS, but just because how mental that photograph was. Another one right here near Tupelo. These are some really mental soundings here. So we're going to be seeing that Cape at 22Z and then by 23Z and 0Z that kind of starts to kind of push this south as this low pressure pushes into Alabama. So we're not going to be seeing too much going on here Cape wise, but there will be some good mixed layer Cape, and that's going to bring the opportunity for these storms along the southern half of Mississippi. We are going to be seeing that Cape there. We are going to be seeing that mixed layer Cape as well. So we're going to be seeing some decent opportunities as well towards Tuscaloosa. This is also a pretty good sounding. But I hope you guys enjoy the video and stay safe out there. And I will decide if I stream later on. But see you guys later.